Call the City of Sioux Falls Council and Minnehaha County Commission joint meeting together. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all right? Oh, roll call first. I'm sorry, we're going to start with the roll call.
Councilors Anderson?
Here.
Benega?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Costello?
Here.
Jameson?
Here.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Here.
Staggers?
Present.
I'd like to call the Minnehaha County Commission to order.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a brief explanation, I'm sitting in this chair for Mayor Munson. He is on some city business. There were some people that were in town that were very influential and wanted to meet with him. So the first item on is to approve the regular agenda. Do I have a motion on the city?
So move, Anderson.
I second the motion, Knutson.
Okay, the agenda is moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Councilors Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Motion carries to the city, 8-0. Okay. Item number 1.
Conditional use permit appeal number 09-45, 6704, 6708 North 9th Avenue. The conditional use permit was for a group daycare with a maximum of 12 children. The City Planning Commission approved the conditional use permit 4-1, and the County Planning Commission approved the conditional use permit 4-2 with the following stipulations. One, any exterior lighting shall be of full cutoff and fully shielded design. 2, that the applicant obtains and maintains a South Dakota sales tax license. 3, that the group daycare facility not exceed 12 children. 4, that existing pool shall have fencing installed immediately that meets the requirements of the 2006 IBC International Building Code. 5, any signage installed shall not exceed 4 square feet. 6, the applicant shall maintain 2 exits, an operational smoke detector in each room of the accessory structure building, the structure being used for the group daycare facility, and that 1 fire extinguisher be located in the building. 7, the play area as identified on the site plan shall be secured with a fence at least 4 feet in height. 8, the applicant shall obtain a state permit for group daycare or daycare center from the South Dakota Department of Social Services. 9, hours of operation shall be from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Thank you. Scott Anderson, Minnehaha County Planning Director, and I'm here to give you a brief overview of this conditional use permit request. As was indicated, this was heard before the joint planning commissions of the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County on July 24th, at which time a public hearing was held, and there were a number of neighbors from that area that spoke. Planning Commission, as indicated, recommended approval with the 9 conditions, and subsequently this conditional use permit was appealed by Brian Johnson, a resident within the neighborhood. This is a request for a conditional use permit to operate a group daycare facility with a maximum of 12 children. The location is shown on the PowerPoint in front of you. This is located approximately half a mile north of the city limits on the east side of Cliff Avenue. And the applicant is requesting to operate the group daycare in a building, an accessory building, which is located directly north of the existing single-family residence. That building measures approximately 25 feet by 30 feet, and the site plan of the building has been included for your review. There are 2 outside entrances, one on the east side and one on the west side of the building. There will be 2 large rooms and a 6 by 12 foot bathroom as shown on the site plan. And the applicant will be required to obtain a state permit for a group daycare facility or a daycare center from the South Dakota Department of Social Services. I did inspect the property on July 14th, and I found that there was a circular above-ground pool that was located in what is identified as the play area. And in the site plan, however, it was indicated to be directly east of the residence. I indicated to Mr. Claxton, the applicant, that they would have to have a fence around that pool area, and the condition was added or was implemented as read, indicating that they would have fencing upon the opening of the daycare. I also observed that there were 3 pit bulls on the property, and I indicated that I checked with the Humane Society, and they had indicated that the animal control had been out to this site because the dogs had been running it loose. While the city nor the county have identified pit bulls as being any more dangerous than any other breed, I did want to bring this forth to, and it was discussed at the Planning Commission, that there were animals on the property. The daycare was well discussed, this proposed use, and I think the Planning Commission really focused on the use of that on this site. And after a significant amount of testimony from both parties, both sides, the Planning Commission recommended approval with the 9 conditions as read. Tonight, I will show you a couple of slides before I go any further of the property. This is the single-family residence. The subject, or the accessory building is located basically directly to the north of this. So this is the south side of the property. The applicant has indicated that between that fence line and the existing driveway, they will be expanding that driveway a little bit where you can see the white van basically from that point to the road for some additional parking. This is the rear of the existing single-family residence. This is the accessory building. You can see the entrance. This would be on the west side of the building. This is the also, let's see, this is on the, I believe this is also on the west side of the building. This is from the subject property looking south. This is the property directly across the street to the west. This is the property to the north. And that would be all of the slides. Tonight you have a couple of options. You can vote to affirm or to acknowledge the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval with the 9 conditions. You can vote approval with alternate conditions or additional conditions, or you can recommend denial. So you have a couple of options that are before you or open to you. I'd be glad to answer any questions, and I know that there are people for and opposed in the audience.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, Scott, you didn't have a picture of that pool.
No, I didn't.
Is it really a very large pool? Or
Oh, it's a standard, one of those soft-sided, probably 3-foot high, circular, soft rubber pools.
Okay, so a fence around that?
Yes. That would be certainly my recommendation based on the safety of the site.
Councilor Knudsen?
Mr. Anderson, so that the accessory building is air-conditioned and heated, I assume, or would be?
Yeah?
Okay, and then how, where are the pit bulls kept in relationship to the whole overall scheme of things here?
They are, if you can go back to the site plan, I'll be glad to point that out. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, it says dog and storage. They have that fenced, so it is located away from where the children are, and it is fenced in. It was securely fenced.
Councilor Jameson?
Scott, tell me, how do you actually drop off your kids to this building, and how do they come and go?
And I discussed that with the applicant. They will be parking on the driveway. They will drop off the children to the single-family residence, and then they will walk out the back door, and there is a sidewalk that leads between the existing single-family residence and the the accessory building, the proposed daycare.
Commissioner Tweed?
I have a couple of issues, I guess. I mean, what we're charged to do is to decide whether this is a proper, for conditional use. It's not for us to judge about dogs and pools and all those sorts of things, correct?
That is a good point. We should, I would ask that you certainly review this from a land
Yeah.
use perspective. As I indicated in the staff report, the whole pit bull issue was an item or was an issue that was brought forth by some of the neighbors that were calling me when this was first posted. I really felt that we should, address it because it was going to be brought before you one way or the other. And I felt that I tried to address it from a perspective of, are those animals regulated any differently than Cocker Spaniels or Poodles or anything else? And currently, within the county, they are not, and it's my understanding that within the City of Sioux Falls, they are not. But this is sort of an issue that has been discussed around the nation on what to do with pit bulls.
And if I may follow up, Dan?
Please.
One of the things that you noted in your briefing to us was that the work on the building had been done without a building permit. And so that bothers me a little bit because we put a number of conditions now on this, on this conditional use. And so are we going to have to follow up constantly to make sure that these conditions are met? At one point in the briefing, it mentions that there are some liability issues, being the pool as well as the dogs. And that those liability issues aren't our issues, they're the owner's issues, but yet if we grant this conditional use, we're setting up a situation that perhaps does have some liability issues. So, there's sort of a fine line there in my mind.
And I will let you know that it was discussed at the Planning Commission whether that pool was going to be moved to where it was indicated it was going to be on the site plan. And at the Planning Commission, the applicant indicated that no, it would not be, that they would not allow that area to be used for a play area. And the area, if you see on the front of the building, they indicated that would be the primary or would be the play area.
Commissioner Kelly?
Scott, who, does the township road?
Yes, that's correct. 9th Avenue is maintained by Mapleton Township.
And they're all gravel.
That's correct.
And do you have any idea how many cars per day this could generate?
Well, we're talking a maximum of 12 children. And so, I would indicate that probably you could use a rate of 2 to 2.5 trips per child per day. And that would typically be the maximum, where you would have potentially one drop-off per child, one pickup per child, and then there would be certainly a fraction of parents that may want to go out there over their noon hour for some reason. And so, if you took a rate of 2.5 trips times 12, you're talking about 24 and 6, you're talking about approximately 30 trips per day additional on the road.
Any other questions or council discussion?
Scott, I have a question. There was a letter sent by an attorney regarding the renter sanitary district, and I think he was worried about taps related to whether or not they had permission to go ahead and handle the tap. Has there been any follow-through regarding that?
It's my understanding that that's been resolved, but that may be a question better directed to the applicant, because I think that they are going to be able to answer that. It's not really my preview to regulate how the sanitary sewer district operates, and so I think that they've resolved that.
But we do make it a practice at the county commission to work with our other government.
Yes.
Correct?
Mm-hmm. And that's why I included the letter to you, so you would be aware that there were some concerns there by the sanitary sewer. They have not informed me one way or the other, but I did hear that it had been resolved.
Scott, I have a question for you. On our notes here, it says the City Planning Commission approved it 4-1, and the County Planning Commission approved it 4-2, with the stipulations, so that the city's Planning Commission didn't have any stipulations on it?
They voted on the
Was it
same,
joint? Okay.
their joint stipulations by both.
So they were okay. I have a question for our City Attorney, Assistant City Attorney Gail. Gail, to me, this seems very similar to a recent zoning that we had at the City Council, where on 57th Street, where we were dealing with just the land use, even though there was some other factors that pertained into that. The issue about whether there's a dog there or the pool or anything there, is that really relevant for our discussions as far as the city?
Well, Gail Eastland, Assistant City Attorney. Maybe I overanalyze things a little bit too much. I think the dog issue might come into play as a land use issue if there was noise created by the animals, there's more activity by the children, and that somehow erodes the general health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding properties. I mean, I guess I could read that into it potentially, but I would agree that's more of a non-issue, generally speaking, for the commission and the council, because it's not a straight black and white land use issue, which is what a conditional use permit is all about. I don't know if that helps or muddies the water.
I imagine the dog's there either way.
Right, yeah. Yeah, your issue is land use, and the traffic and dust and road problems are certainly your bailiwick when it comes to this sort of vote.
Any other questions or discussions? Do we have any?
Just brings up another question, and maybe, Gail, you're not the person to answer that question. I'm not sure that Scott is either, but are there other daycares in that neighborhood?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I believe there's one other one that's located on Cliff Avenue. It's my understanding they don't have a conditional use permit, and that might be something that is going to be discussed by other people too.
Okay.
So,
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak to this topic? Yeah, proponents or opponents, either way. Yes, sir, come forward. Please just state your name.
Ernest Claxton. I live at the resident that's requesting a conditional use permit. There's been several issues as far as the dog situation. That issue has been coming up the most. I've had my kennels installed professionally. They're double. There's fence kennels, chain link around a cement pad with the dogs secured inside of that area. And then there's a 6-foot tall wooden fence that goes around that area. So the dogs are double locked in. They're not, you can't see in and you can't see out. Cedar fencing, and it's solid. You can't see the dogs and the dogs can't see you. Another issue that was brought up is a couple of neighbors are concerned about the noise situation that the kids would make. I don't see that being an issue. We live in an area where we live in a direct flight path for the airport, where there's jets taking off and several airplanes that fly over that area every day. And I'm pretty sure the noise from the kids would not be any louder than the airplanes are making. So I don't find that an issue. Also, the fencing situation around the pool, I did agree to have the fence installed around the pool, but that will not be done until we are granted the permit from the Department of Social Services. We already have $35,000 invested into this project, and I don't see that we should move any further until we know that we're going to be granted permission to open the daycare. So once we get permission from the South Dakota Social Services, the fence will be installed. Besides that, I don't see any other issues that should.
Councilor Bendigo?
Could you reiterate your hours of operation, please, and the days you'll be open?
It'll be Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
Commissioner Kelly?
Mr. Claxton, do you breed the pit bulls
Yes, I do.
and sell them?
Yes, I do. The breed of dog that I have are not the regular breed of pit bull. They're a rare breed of pit bull. They're called blue pit bulls. They're considered exotic pets. The dogs average the minimum range of $1,200 a pup. They're all licensed. They're all tagged, shots, and everything.
Councilor Knudsen?
Regarding the stipulations that, have been, that are required for this to go forward in addition to our affirmative vote, following up a little bit on Commissioner Tweet's comment as far as I was wondering if you could share with us why there was not permission given or why you did not go through the appropriate process as far as getting a conditional use permit for the building. If you could just explain that a little bit to us.
Well, when we did go down there we spoke to somebody at the office for planning and zoning, and that person had gave me and my contractor different information than the other person that we had talked to at the office, and we thought we were given the okay to go ahead and start the project. But once we found out that the project was not completed before we got the conditional use, before we got the permit, the building permit, we stopped process. We went and paid the necessary fees and the fine for starting the project, and then the project was continued after we received the permit.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Commissioner Barth?
Mr. Claxton, you could already be operating a daycare with a fewer number of children without any of this permit. Will you be operating this yourself, or are you going to have another agency or another party operate it? Or
No, there will be. We'll be hiring some outside help.
So, but it's going to be your operation, not.
It will be my mother's operation.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this? Please come up, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Johnson. I live at 6709 North 9th Avenue, which is directly across from the proposed daycare. I'm hoping that everyone has had the opportunity to look over the letters that were sent out, because I will be referring to them as we go along here. Although I was instrumental in putting the letters together, I cannot take full credit, as many of the ideas came from concerned neighbors, family, friends. There are 6 concerns I'd like to discuss tonight. The first one, property values. I'm going to read what the staff report, or the Scott Anderson put together here on his conditional use permit application. You probably have a copy of that. He says, the proposed use will have an impact on the enjoyment of the property in the vicinity. There will be significant additional traffic as parents drop off and pick up children. There will also be additional noise from children playing outside. Then he goes on to say, it is unlikely, however, that these impacts will be so significant as to change the property values in this area. Unlikely? We disagree. In our letter, that maybe many of you hopefully had a chance to review, we say this: when it comes to property value, perhaps there's a small segment of buyers that would view a standalone daycare positively, but many buyers will probably be turned off to purchasing a home next to any property value, any type of business. It would seem that there certainly will be some loss to some property values if this daycare is allowed. we'd ask that you carefully distinguish that this permit is for a freestanding business in what was originally built as an auxiliary building for personal use. I'd like to know a rhetorical question here. I want to know how many of you own a home within a block of a standalone daycare or other business which was established after you purchased your property. Number 2, roads. I'm going to read the staff report again. It says, there will be significant additional traffic as parents drop off and pick up children. We would agree with that statement. In our letter, we say, adding this business to our neighborhood could have the effect of adding 12 to 48 or more daily passes for drop-offs, pickups to these roads, equivalent to adding 6 to 12 additional homes, except no one is contributing to the township tax base, which is our source of road funding. I'd like to emphasize, these roads are not paved roads, and we don't feel they're capable of handling the extra traffic. Number 3, noise. I'm going to read again from the staff report. It says, there will also be additional noise from children playing outside. Our letter. Although nearly no one wants excess noise, we feel this usage would raise the noise level not only from a concentration of kids playing outside, but the increased traffic with parents coming and going. Although some people may be gone during the workday, some are retired or work abnormal hours. For those that work a traditional 8 to 5 job, they may now compete with daycare traffic for the turning lane off Highway 115, which is loaded with traffic at those times going by at up to 55 miles an hour. These intersections can be dangerous at times, especially when school is in session, with Sioux Falls, Brandon, and Baltic school buses all using the area roads for pickups and drop-offs. To the comment about the pit bulls. The staff states that they observed 3 dogs that appear to be pit bulls. We also feel the applicant's dogs, together with children, will constitute a constant noise problem in our area. We realize this is an application for a land use permit, but there was concern expressed by the planning and zoning staff about the dogs when writing their recommendation, and we'd like to echo that concern. By the way, on the dog issue, those dogs happened to be in my house here a couple weeks ago. In my house, my wife was entertaining some guests from out of town, and they happened to be out that particular day on these super duper fences that he supposedly has, but he forgets that the gate gets left open. So they were in my backyard. They came up on my deck. I had some folks from Minneapolis entertaining some guests on our back deck, and the door was open. We were in and out. My wife was. 3 dogs up on the deck, 3 pit bulls, in my back patio door, in my house. So I would maybe have another look at these so-called secure fences he's talking about. We called animal control and filed a complaint. Number 4, precedent. Our letter states, we feel approving this permit sets a dangerous precedent for our neighborhood. If this is approved, what would prevent the owners from splitting up their 2 lots and selling this as a standalone daycare business? We've been told that the conditional use permit goes with the property, not the owners. This could adversely affect the neighborhood for many, many years. What basis will this commission have to deny any other property owners the right to open a business in their auxiliary building? A hair salon, repair shop, commercial dog kennel, etc. Doesn't Sioux Falls also need these type of businesses? Some in our neighborhood are watching this decision very carefully, and they're coming up with ideas to start their own business entities. Enforcement, number 5. Even if these conditions or restrictions that accompany this approval, who will enforce these? Who will ensure that the proposed operating hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. are observed? We feel neighbors should not have to bear the burden of policing this unwanted business. If the commission wants to allow this type of activity, then they should commit to the residents that they will enforce the rules on an ongoing basis. Number 6, options for homeowners. If this permit is approved, what alternative do dissatisfied homeowners have? Live with the decision or sell their home, sell their property and move? That seems unreasonable, as many have owned these homes for years and are not looking to move and start over. We have previously submitted a letter of opposition with over 20 neighbors' signatures, and several have voiced concern personally at the previous hearing. We understand that there is a sympathy amongst some on these committees to anyone trying to open a daycare, but shouldn't there also be sympathy for the property rights of tax-paying citizens who oppose this stand-alone daycare? Why should the concerns of the property owners in our neighborhood be ignored just because there's a feeling by some that we need more daycares in Sioux Falls? In closing, let me leave you with a thought. As it is with a lot of important decisions, good intentions often lead to unintended consequences. I'm going to say that one again because I think that's true. As it is with a lot of important decisions, good intentions often lead to unintended consequences. We feel that if this conditional uses permit is approved, it could lead to other problems in our area, some of which have been previously discussed. We are asking each of you to put yourselves in our position when making this important decision for our neighborhood. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Commissioner Kelly?
Johnson, you and your neighbors stuck a significant amount of money in that road. Could you give us a brief?
Sure.
What your history's been with the road?
Why don't I, might be easier just to kind of refer to my letter here on the roads. An outsider to this discussion may view this as a small thing, so we'd like you to consider some background. For many years, I and many in the neighborhood have been disgusted with the condition of our gravel streets that form our neighborhood. We have appealed to our government entities with no help and have had to live with the fact that the original developer did not do a good job designing the original roads and to live with it. Finally, after many requests, our township board agreed that if our development could raise money to improve the roads to a suitable standard, they would maintain them like other township roads. We underwent a grassroots effort, door to door, to seek voluntary contributions to pay for these improvements. Although not everyone could or did contribute, we were able to raise over $15,000 to make noticeable improvements to our neighborhood. Yet, like a gravel driveway, any rain followed by excess traffic, and we have potholes and washboard roads. Keeping a nice car free from dirt and dust can be rare. Preventing dust from entering our homes through open windows is also a problem. Nonetheless, we accept the current condition as part of our neighborhood, hoping the roads are not abused by residents or guests. The roads are arguably not crowned for good drainage for even a single rural driveway, much less residential traffic. Certainly, they are not favorable for commercial usage, and the potholes, washboarding, and dust continue to be an ongoing issue.
Follow up on it. Along with that same issue, is the parking concern you, and do you park on the road? Do people park on the road?
Generally, they don't park on the road. The only thing that concerns me when it comes to parking is I'm directly across from the lot where the daycare is going to be, not the lot where the house is. And they claim that they're going to park, according to everything they tell us, but they claim they're going to park in the residence, so that shouldn't be a problem. However, in the winter, if we get some pretty serious storms out there, who knows where they'll be parking.
Councilor Knudsen?
Mr. Johnson, is that I'm listening very carefully to, like all of us are, to your concerns and those of your neighbors. But I was curious, as someone who realizes, like you do, that in our community or in our entire state, I think right now, I think it's around 94% of the moms are working outside the home, and I'm one of these people that actually does believe there's a shortage of child care centers.
Sure.
And so I guess I was wondering, one, I mean, where would you prefer these children? I mean, I guess I'm wondering what you think the answer is as far as where these wonderful children should be cared for. And secondly, I was curious if there would be any chance that any of the neighbors that they would have young enough children that they would want to use a convenient child care center as opposed to driving halfway across town to drop off their children before they go to work. So 2 questions.
Would you want to take your children next to the pit bulls? I don't know.
Well, and I hear your concerns on that, and I personally have some concerns about pit bulls, but I just figure that, the parents will make that decision.
Right.
And so I think that'll take care of itself by parents.
They are, like somebody said earlier, they are already permitted by law to have a daycare in their house. We don't understand really why they want to do it in this building. Can we trust them? Can we trust them? That comes down to trust to me. Are there some ulterior motives here? I don't know. We could speculate on that, and I'd like to, but I won't. And as far as the daycares in South Dakota, yeah. Do we need barbers? I obviously don't need a barber very much, but do we need barbers in South Dakota? Sure. Do we need this? Do we need that? Where do you stop? And where do we put these businesses that want to go in? Do we put them in residential zone neighborhoods? What we're looking at here is a standalone business. What happens if they split that property off and decide to sell it? We're going to have Montessori North right across from me. It could happen. And I'm not saying anything bad about Montessori. Our kids have used those facilities, and they're excellent facilities. I think they should go where they're zoned for daycares and not intrude into the residential areas like this being proposed here.
Councilor Knudsen, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a follow-up. I guess I think it's very important that neighbors trust each other, and I regret that, that the feelings are as strong as they are. And going next step is the city councilors do not have the packet of information the county commissioners have, so I don't have that, so I don't have those letters and so forth. But I'm doing fine because I'm reviewing with the county commissioner here. But I guess I was wondering, were there some neighborhood meetings held on this topic, and did some of you get together and get to know each other a little bit during the planning process to see if maybe you might even like each other?
I'm not the one proposing to break or to go outside the law, so I didn't figure it was my responsibility to go around the neighborhood than trying to encourage somebody to get a conditional use permit, because it should have been the applicant's responsibility to make goodwill with the neighbors, I think, if they want to do something that's not allowed by law. It shouldn't have been I understand what you're saying, but shouldn't it have been the applicant's duty to, if they want to do something that's not allowed by law, to go around to your neighbors and make some goodwill? That's what I'd have done if I would have, tried to set up a business in my shop.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly what I meant. I didn't mean that you should have organized it. I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. I just didn't know if I was wondering if the applicant had some neighborhood meetings on this topic.
No.
Commissioner Barr.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, are there any other conditions that would make this more palatable to you that could be added to the 9 that are already there? And they seem to be a pretty long list of concerns, and everything maybe not is not covered, but is there another condition or two that would make this easier for you to put up with?
We're not even sure that the applicant can meet the conditions that are spelled out in the letter. Can he get a South Dakota daycare license? We don't know what the requirements are for that. That, I guess that's a separate issue, I guess, but it has a condition in here. There's no conditions that I can think of that I don't want it in my area. I think that's the bottom line.
If I might, many times we have these things happen, and when it all comes down, they say, well, if that, Hall Road was just a quarter-mile north, it would have been okay. But then they have tried to block the operation the whole time, and instead of working with the neighbor to try to figure out, would more off-street parking, would that help, for example? Or I'm just asking if there's something that could be added that might make it easier for the neighborhood.
I'm not aware of anything, and I can't think of anything right off, but possibly there could be something, but I'm not aware of anything, Commissioner Bartha, that would appease us.
Scott or Mike, I've got a question for you regarding Mr. Johnson's number 4 concern, the precedent. This is a conditional use permit for a daycare and a daycare only, isn't it?
That's correct. The conditional use permit is for a group daycare, which is 6 children and above.
Okay, so he would not need a permit if he were only having 6.
If it was 6 children or fewer, they do not need a permit for that.
Okay, so the concern that it might become some other commercial business is unwarranted then?
Well, the conditional use permit is specific for this use, the child daycare facility. So if a conditional use permit was issued, that wouldn't allow them to open a welding shop or a barber shop as some kind of a home occupation. It would be specific to a child daycare facility.
And can you speak to the, if it were somehow sometime down the road sold off and be a standalone facility, would that be allowed? Or does it have to be in conjunction with the single-family home?
It's in conjunction with that single-family residence. So you could not just sell off that lot and have it as because the principle or the primary use of that facility is as a single-family residence. Typically, we view these home occupations as a use that's accessory to the established single-family residence. Now, I will let you know that if it's a concern of the Joint Commissions, you can add a condition that specifically ties the conditional use permit to those property owners. And if they should sell and move, then you have a couple of options. You can word it that the conditional use permit becomes void, or you could word a condition that says they would have to come in and have an amendment basically to move it to the new property owners.
Okay. Councilor Anderson, you had a question?
I had a question. Mike Cooper, you might be able to help
Do you
me
have any
with
more questions? We may have.
Okay. Mike, do we have any type of daycares that are set up like this within the city?
For this level of group daycare, or first of all, I should say, I'm Mike Cooper with the City of Sioux Falls Planning Department. This level of daycare that's between 7 and 12 children, we have about 150 locations currently within the city limits of Sioux Falls.
But do we have any set up similar to this where there's a house with another standing building that they're using for?
I can't think of any that are actually in an accessory building, but our ordinance does allow that.
It does?
Yes.
Okay, that's where I was headed.
It says it's typically within the residence, but it doesn't say that it has to be.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Knudsen?
Not a question. I just need to make a correction because, and I apologize for my error, is that the City Council clearly had all the information electronically, and that I misspoke on that. I just didn't have a hard copy, and I just did not look at the electronics. So that's my my error. I apologize.
Any other comments from the council or commission, or any other, Councilor Jameson?
Scott, maybe you can help me. If they wanted to have this daycare center in their home without the external building, they say they live on the upper floor and have the whole basement as a daycare facility. Could they do that?
They could. They'd have to go through the same process of obtaining the conditional use permit because they would be exceeding the 6 children. So it would be also a requirement to obtain the conditional use permit.
Thanks.
Any other proponents or opponents would like to speak? Is there a motion on the city side?
I move for approval, Knudsen.
there a second?
Brown seconds.
Any further discussion on the council side? Denise, will you call the roll?
Counselor Brown.
Yes.
Counselor Benega.
Yes.
Counselor Costello.
Yes.
Counselor Jameson.
No.
Counselor Knudsen.
Yes.
Counselor Litz. Counselor Staggers.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, I have 6 yes, 1 no, and 1 excused. Motion carries for the city.
I would like to make a motion on the county side to approve this, but I would like to add an additional condition.
This is rough on me the first time.
I'm sorry.
You're being rough on me changing these up on the first time out here.
I don't know if, what I would like to do is add a condition that this conditional use stays with this owner.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, if we withdraw your motion and the second, we can probably reconsider.
I will withdraw my motion.
Is that okay with the second? I think it was Benega.
But let's confirm that with our city attorney first.
If I might, why don't we wait and see how this goes with the county? And
Okay.
then-
Well, let's
Okay.
go.
All right, so I
Point
leave
of
my
order
motion on
on
the
this,
books.
Mr. Chair. I mean, we've already had an official action. We cannot
Yeah,
just simply go back and say, well, we're going to forget our
May I comment?
motion and
Let's
second.
listen to our parliamentarian for a second.
May I comment? I think you could do a motion to reconsider by those who voted on the prevailing side, and then when you do your motion to consider, you could amend it. Or you may want to delay that till after the county votes, and then do your motion to consider. You can do that all in the same evening, the same meeting.
Let's see what the county does and then go from there.
Okay, then I will continue with my motion. I move to approve this conditional use permit with an additional condition, condition number 10, which would say that this conditional use is allocated to this particular owner and goes away with the new owner.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's been a motion and a second. Go ahead, Commissioner Burke.
You know, I guess for me, reversing the planning commission is a difficult thing to do, and I believe that the conditions that are on this are fairly strong, and I'm sorry that as a community we haven't maybe worked, as a neighborhood, haven't worked as hard as we could have to figure out a way to make it more palatable to everyone. But again, it's difficult to reverse the planning commission without really a strong issue, and so I'm going to support Commissioner Tweet's motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Kelly?
I opposed this on the planning commission. The vote was 4-2, so it was not by any stretch unanimous or consensus. I have concerns. I've been out there several times. The traffic concern, those roads are gravel roads. They're dusty with any amount of traffic out there. I think when you add the parking problem in the wintertime, I think you've got some very serious concerns there, and the potential of 8 to a dozen cars being there at any given time and 30 car units a day will add quite an impact on that area. That street there's only about a dozen houses, I believe, on that street, and that's what the traffic has been in the past. There's only 2 ways in. There's one in the south and one in the north. The one in the north is not a particularly good road. I don't know if it's kept maintained, but this is unusual. A standalone facility. I don't believe there are any others in the county, and whether or not what the reasoning is, but it is a standalone business. It is separate from the house. I know we're not supposed to consider the pit bulls, but I do. One, there's been numerous problems out there with the pit bulls, and I think the fact that it was brought up last week that the gate was open concerns me a lot, and especially with he's breeding them, which makes it a little home business in its own. And I think it's something that we got to consider. And I will not support this motion, and I did not on the planning side, and I will not on this side.
I favored the original motion, I can't support the limitation, so I won't be supporting your amendment, but I do support it overall. So with that being said, I guess I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Then I would may I make a substitute motion or a different motion? I move approval of the conditional use permit.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And if I may speak to my motion for just a moment, I grew up in rural Hutchinson County, and we drove township roads day and night for years. And 12 children, multiple kids in some cases, 2, 3, an additional 24 cars a day on that road is not going to make any difference. I believe we're kind of attaching our own value system to whether or not this is correct. This is a land use issue, and when the permit is applied for at the state, they will look at a lot of these other issues that we're trying to intrude into what is truly a land use issue. Fits into the ordinances that the city has, fits into the ordinances that the county has. Our planning department recommended approval. Both of our planning commissions voted to approve. I think it would be punitive here for us to deny this conditional use based on strictly a land use issues.
Thank you. I believe that good fences make good neighbors, and we do have home occupations that are thriving in our community, and this is one of those that meets with those requirements. Anybody else? Okay, then we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3-1.
Good to go on that. Okay, item 2.
Second reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Appendix C of the 2002 revised ordinances for Minnehaha County and the City of Sioux Falls by amending the text pertaining to salvage and junkyards, produce sales, recreation, and bed and breakfasts, and by amending the A1 agricultural, RC recreation conservation districts, I1 and I2 industrial districts, and the definitions.
Pat Herman for County Planning. These recommendations for changes to the zoning ordinance are coming from both the city and the county zoning departments. The first ones would change the industrial zones within the ordinance by adding 2 items as conditional use permits. That would be salvage operation and recycling processing facility. A definition for each of those terms would be added to the ordinance, as well as a definition for salvageable materials. In the A1 Ag District and the Recreation Conservation Zones, we would add as a conditional use item produce stand and farmer's market, and then change outdoor recreational facility to just recreational facility. Again, we would add definitions for each of those terms, and then a definition for bed and breakfast, which has not existed in the ordinance. Then we have a couple of housekeeping items on this ordinance change. Number 1 would be renumbering the definition for yard. It was just put in incorrectly. It wasn't in alphabetical order, so we just changed the numbering. The definition stays the same. And then we also are asking to delete Articles 19.10 and 19.11. These address telecommunications, antenna support structures, and broadcast towers. Right now, they're listed in the administrative area for conditional use permits, and they really need to be listed in Section 15.15, which is the additional use section, which deals with towers and broadcast towers. So I would be happy to answer any questions for you.
Yeah. Is there anything controversial about this change by anyone? I mean, what?
I don't believe so. Our office was not contacted with anything. So.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, you mentioned, Pat, this is the first time we're going to have a definition of bed and breakfasts.
Correct.
So why do we need a definition of that?
Well, we just felt it would be better for the general public to understand kind of what we're looking for in a bed and breakfast, and it also helps the staff to interpret when people come in and have plans on what they want to do as far as the bed and breakfast.
But there's no regulations dealing with bed and breakfasts now?
There's no definition for it. They would have to go through a conditional use permit in order to get approval. It just helps everybody be on the same page if we start with a definition.
But I mean, definition then usually leads to regulation.
Well, they're regulated anyway. They'd have to go through a conditional use permit in order to operate, so there would be conditions put on that.
Any other comments from the councils?
Chair will entertain a motion.
Approval.
There's been a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Motion from the city side?
I move to approve item number 2, Knutson.
Second, Jameson.
There's a motion and a second. Please, can you call the roll?
Councilors Brown,
Aye.
Costello,
Aye.
Jameson,
Aye.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz, Staggers,
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Benega.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 3.
Joint budget hearing for the Siouxland Heritage Museum.
Good evening. Bill Hoskin, Director of the Siouxland Heritage Museum. I believe tonight we're looking at discussing this Siouxland Heritage Museum's operations budget, the Special Enterprise Fund budget, and the museum store budget. The operations budget is is one where, under the joint cooperative agreement, the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County each contribute 50% to that operations budget. The operations budget is used for human resources expenses as well as operational expenses for the museum, things like supplies for building exhibits and providing educational programs. A number of years ago, the enterprise fund and the operations budget were essentially tied. In the enterprise fund is providing partial funding for 2 of staff positions. 1/4 of the hours are paid for out of the enterprise fund, and as well as benefits. So, and those 2 positions are the museum events coordinator and the exhibits assistant. Our operational budget has increased. All the increases are included in the normal human resources, the step increases, a 1.8% cost of living increase that the county commissioned, and a estimated 10% increase in the cost of health insurance. The portion of the budget that's operational expenses is actually smaller in the 2010 request than it is in 2009. The enterprise fund budget and the museum enterprise fund is really set up to account for expenses associated with the rental of space in the museum system for sponsorships and the provision of programs, events, and services for which a fee is charged. And the reason the 2 positions got tied into this is the events coordinator schedules all the rentals of the facility. The exhibits assistant works on contract exhibit work, and as a consequence of those enterprise fund activities, the funding for those positions partially comes out of here. So if you look at our total request in the operations budget, we're asking for $1,143,187. And in the enterprise fund, a budget of $85,350. We're estimating that the cost of the payroll will be approximately $33,000 out of the enterprise fund for those two positions. So that amount has been deducted from the bottom line in terms of what the 50-50 split is between the city and county, if that's clear as mud. Are there questions about the operations budget or the enterprise fund budget and how it relates? And the store budget is strictly a revenue budget for the operation of the store, so that we can provide the visitors with something that they can take with them. It's an add-on to the experience.
Councilor Jamison?
I was strumming through some pages. Could you just briefly tell me again what the increase is and what you're going to do with it?
Well, the total increase is just over $48,000. In the operations budget, its entirety goes for step increases for staff that are normal, a 1.8% COLA that the county commission has approved for all county employees, and an estimated 10% increase in the health insurance.
Any other questions from the council or commission?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the chair of our Siouxland Heritage Museum Board is in the audience, Diane Netley. She works very hard to keep Bill on the straight and narrow, and Bill has prepared an excellent document for us, so thank you for that, Bill.
Any other comments?
I would ask a question, if I may.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Bill, unfortunately, it appears that we're not going to be making any steps towards getting the archive moving in this next calendar year. If there was any movement, would you have a lot of additional personnel costs if there was an archive that we were moving some of your valuable artifacts?
Under our current proposal, we would be looking at very minimal increase. We would ask for one staff position, which would be someone at the front desk. But let's see, I could tell you, the cost would be...
Well, if I might, I guess I'm an advocate of moving forward on that plan, and I recognize that it's not in the city's CIP at this time, but I would really like to find a way to move that forward. I believe that we could build that for less money today than we might project at a busier time for local contractors. And the fact that we can't necessarily do everything doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything.
I can get you the figure on that.
Thank you. That's for another time, Bill. Thank you.
Hey, Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, just to respond to what Jeff said there about the archive. We're going to be, of course, dealing with our CIP, voting on it in our budget in September. And one of the amendments I have will be to put that in the CIP program of the city. So we'll see what happens there.
Any other questions from the council or commission? Any other public input, pros or cons?
If I may, I feel that I should just only respond to my fellow Commissioner Barth to say that I agree with him. Not sure that it could happen next year, but it would be when we did the Health and Human Services building, we put a team of people together, some city elected folks as well as some staff and the counterparts on the county side, and it took about a year for all that groundwork to take place. So it's clear that we probably wouldn't be building this in 2010, but if we could at least put that team of folks together so that we could send a clear message to the halls. If anybody has driven by Augustana campus, you'll see that when that gift was given from the halls to Augustana, they built a stadium. I think we have an obligation to look at this gift as something that needs to be acted on before 5 or 10 years are over. So I support Commissioner Barr.
Commissioner Keller?
Well, I'd like to follow up on Carol, too. At some point, we're going to have an architect walk in there and say, we got a real problem with the storage we're using on the third floor. And I certainly think it would be a lot better for us to take action now that we can take our time and do it right, as opposed to someday having somebody walk in and say, you guys got about 30 days and you're going to have to get that stuff out of there. So I would hope that the city would reconsider that. And I've talked to Bill. There are some other possibilities with that building of doing things. So I think we could put a deal together that would be very good.
Councilor Knudsen?
And I would just like to say I continue to be a strong advocate of getting that wonderful facility built, too, and I just can't wait until the city sales tax rises again to about 7% so we can do all of these great things, and I say that very, very respectfully.
Rising tides lifts all boats. Any other comments?
I wouldn't say with taxes it does.
The chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval of the museum budget.
Second.
We have a motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Is there a motion from the city side?
So move, Anderson.
Second? Is there a second from the city side?
Yes, I second that motion.
Knudsen? Please, could you call the roll, please?
Councilors Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Knudsen?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Item number 4.
Joint budget hearing for the Siouxland libraries.
Good evening, Sally Felix with Siouxland Libraries, and if you give us just a second here and get ourselves organized. Steve was being real helpful to us. I don't think we coordinated ourselves. For city council members, in your budget book, the library presentation, or library budget, starts on page 67, and I believe that the county commission also should have received that same information that the city has. You don't have the whole book, but you do have the library's part of it. And I apologize because some of you have seen some of these slides before. You've had already a long day, and some of you have another long night coming up, hopefully not too long, so I'll go quickly. I did talk with the city council members about how our libraries really are at the heart of our communities and do a variety of things for people of all ages and all walks of life, all economic levels, within our community. Everybody knows we have books, and certainly we have lots of other media. We do a lot with our computer services, our online database services. If you can kind of go through a little faster today. I'm going to go quickly. One of the things that we do is we really do help new immigrants when they come into our communities, because we do find that the public library is one of the first places that they stop to get a library card, along with doing a variety of things for the entire community. I think everybody probably knows, but just to remind you, we have a main library, and of course we're still under construction. We have 11 branches. 3 of those are in the City of Sioux Falls, and 8 of those are in Minnehaha County. We have a bookmobile which serves both the city and the county. Our population is upwards of 183,000, since we serve both the city and the county, 96,000 borrowers, and about 366,000 items. Looking at our budget, you can see here the breakdown of the budget for Siouxland Libraries. I'm not going to read it to you. You can see our operating budget is about $6.6 million. That does include the city's share of the museum. And our capital budget, which is largely the West Side Branch Library, is a little over $5 million. One of our goals for next year is to expand access to library service and materials to enhance customer satisfaction. Obviously, completing the main library is very important to that. Starting the design of the West Side Branch Library is important. Maintaining our expenditures and our acquisition of library materials in a variety of formats is important, and keeping the service hours that we have, the hours that we're open, both in the city and the county. I mentioned earlier, or I talked about materials. Obviously, that's materials, books, DVDs, magazines, periodicals, all those print and non-print items that we have. That is a part and parcel of what we do. And we have a number of measures in our budget next year for our performance goals that are looking at ways to help us know whether we're doing a good job at that or not. I've talked to most of you many times about the importance of computer services, and folks who don't have computers, or even people who do, use a lot, libraries a lot for computer services. And that's, I will tell you, particularly an example there in Valley Springs. Valley Springs is probably our smallest branch library in terms of size, collection, and, well, one of the smaller ones in terms of hours open. I'll be honest with you, it's not a big circulating library, but those computers are used every hour that that library is open. So that is definitely filling a need in that community. We do pride ourselves on trying to encourage people to learn to read and to enjoy reading, and certainly to use libraries. We do that a lot with programs, and we are putting more of an emphasis on programs next year, particularly for adults. And these last couple slides here just give you some examples of some of the programs we had this summer. Real quickly on the capital uses, most of our capital budget, as I said, is going to go for the West Side Branch Library to start the design. We also, I think probably everybody is aware, we are buying a new bookmobile next year, and that's one of our big capital expenses as well. That's paid for about 2/3 by the county and 1/3 by the city. We're looking at redesigning, not service so much as looking at the actual truck itself. It will carry slightly fewer items than our big bookmobile carries. We will be able to actually operate it with one person. Now we need two. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from Ms. Felix this evening?
Any public input, pros or cons? Is there a motion from the city side?
Move to approve. Brown.
Second, Jameson.
Please, can you call the roll, please?
Councilors Brown,
Yes.
Costello.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Staggers. Anderson.
Yes.
Benega.
Motion carries 5-0. I guess it's 3 excused.
Motion to approve, county side.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll always champion the building of a better library system as opposed to bigger jails.
Aye.
So with that being said, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item 5.
Joint budget hearing for Metro Communications.
Mr. Chair, I need to excuse myself from this discussion. My employer provides services to Metro 911.
We'll see you at 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Good evening. Anna Raker, Business Manager for Metro Communications. You should have received your budget as adopted by the Metro Management Council on May 20th, 2009. And just a quick overview, our total revenue has a decrease of 0.4%, but with the city and county approved share of contribution has an increase of 2.1%. Our total expenditures are anticipated at increasing at 1.3% for 2010. Of those expenditures, personnel is anticipated to increase by 6.5%. But when taken into consideration the fact that we adopted a wage study change late in 2008, that increase is only 4.7%, considering that. Although operating expenditures are increasing by 12%, the capital expenditures are decreasing by a very large percent. A portion of this is due in part to, a portion of this is due in part to recategorizing of expenses that historically we considered capital outlay but are more accurately defined as operating. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I can.
I have one question. How long has it been since the state has given us an increase in this 911 the surcharge?
I believe the 911 surcharges are as they were adopted.
Then, do we ever entertain the idea that we should go and ask for additional, because obviously our costs increase, salaries increase, cost of equipment increase. Do you have any comments regarding that?
I think it's a conversation we have every year. I know that both the City Council and the County Commission have discussed this separately. I believe that the City Council took action to look at.
I think it was in one of the council's priorities for the legislative session. So.
Oh, he's coming here.
Correct.
Well, the current or the past. So I'm sure I anticipate it being there again.
And I believe that Ken McFarland has also expressed some concern and has discussed that with all of you. The state has a 911 board that Darren has had conversations with, and it certainly is something to think about. The 911 revenues having been established as a set amount of 75 cents per line allow for growth in population and in use of phone lines, but it does not account for inflation, and that does become a concern.
Councilor Anderson?
I just have a question on your overtime here. You had 2009 amended budget of $126,955, and you're looking at about a $50,000 increase. Is that because of personnel, or what's the reason for that much increase in overtime?
We actually implemented some changes in our policies in how we, in our staffing and how we allowed, how we handled our staffing, which directly affected overtime. And that was something that was discussed with each of the Metro Management Council members late in 2008. And so this is a direct reflection of those changes. And if you were to look at historical figures, you would find that this is a large decrease in what we have actually seen in previous years. If you looked at historical figures in 2008 and previous, you would find a much larger amount. So even though this is an increase from the 2009 budget, I think you would be pleasantly surprised by the decrease from actual.
As a way of further explanation on that, Councilor Anderson, I believe in the previous budgets, the overtime was calculated, overtime is time and a half, so they were calculating as the halftime portion of it, versus today, we're counting it, I think, as probably the rest of the world does it, as the time and a half.
Thank you.
And so I think what I'm saying is that if we were to look at the overtime hours, the hours has been reduced significantly. But because it's the full time and a half pay, it's the dollar value is higher.
There's a combination of both there.
Yep.
So.
Could I just make a comment? I really want to thank Anna. For one thing, you've been a huge assistance to this organization because you bring skills to an organization that were lacking before. And the fact that you're now a standalone, I think, was a scary thing in the beginning, but a good thing in the end. And I would certainly want to thank my commissioners, Commissioner Packness and Commissioner Hyatt, for the extra time. And I know, Pat, who else is with you?
Councilor Bennigan and the mayor.
Okay, I mean, thank you to all of you because you've spent inordinate amounts of time making sure that the system is up and running and that it's efficient and has great efficacy. And I thank all of you for what you do. Yep.
We have a great team, and the city and county finance, Tom Huber, Sue Roust, Bill O'Toole and Carrie Deaver, all between HR and finance. We've had a great support network from both the city and county, and I think you've got a great team. We work well together, and we're excited about the future.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners or councilors? Any public input, pros or cons? Seeing none, I would take a motion from the city side.
Move for approval, Benega.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Anderson.
I was one, sir.
We'll go for Anderson. Please call the roll, please.
Councilors Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Benega.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0, 2 abstain.
Commissioner Kelly, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
2 seconds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes unanimously.
Do I have a motion to adjourn from the city side?
So moved.
Benega, is there a second?
I second that, Knutson.
Knutson? Denise, will you call the roll?
Councilors Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Benega.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Second. Motion and second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion
Aye.
passes unanimously.
We are adjourned.